I hope all of you have heard of Ron Brown's Best. He's been advertising in all the magazines. He shows up at SWAT almost every year. And he's a very, very nice man. Probably 5 years ago, I bought a Longworth chuck from him at SWAT. And I didn't really know who he was at the time. That was 5 years ago. And so then 2 years later at SWAT, I saw him and I said that this Longworth chuck that I bought from you doesn't turn. You know what a Longworth chuck is? It rotates like this. And it was made out of HDPE, real hard plastic, and cut on a CNC machine. And as you turn it, the knobs come in, grab your plate so that you can turn the bottom of a bowl or whatever. And I told him that this Longworth chuck that I bought 2 years earlier doesn't rotate easily. I've taken it apart and waxed it, kind of sanded some of the sharp edges off of it, tried to get it to turn, and just wouldn't turn. He said, "Send it back to me. I'll send you another one." So I sent it back to him, and then he sent me a brand new production, which happened to have a piece of white, real thin, slick plastic in between the two. Now it just slides like every. That's the kind of man that Ron Brown is. 2 years earlier, I bought the thing from him. He apparently knew that there had problems with the old version, and he just sent me a brand new one. And the only thing it cost me was just the shipping to get it back to him. So I've seen him and I watch him on YouTube quite a bit. You can learn a lot from the videos that he has, and he makes all kinds of stuff. One thing in particular is a bowl out of a board jig, and that's what this is. I'm going to show you that tonight. And I just emailed him and just for the heck of it said, "Hey, send me a bowl from a cut master," or whatever he calls it. And he emailed back, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I called him on the phone. And I said, "How do we do this?" He gave me my address. And when the box came with this brand new system in it, one of the instructions was I would have to learn how to use it and then give it away in the raffle. So this jig is going to be given away in our raffle. So buy some tickets. Buy more than one ticket tonight. And that's just the kind of guy he is. He wants to help clubs around. And he also offered to send us something for our Christmas giveaway. And I'll remind him of that. It's just a really, really nice guy. So that's what this is, and this is what I'm going to show you how to make. It blew apart on me. There's about 9 pieces of wood in here, and it got too thin, and I'll tell you why it got too thin, and it came apart. But I salvaged the rest of it. And it turned out to be this. There's 3 rings here at the bottom and 2 other rings out of one board, and that was part of it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different pieces of wood here. And it's all comes from one board, a flat board that we all can get at the big box stores, or glue them up like I did here. This is all scrap wood right here. The last demo I did was all about scrap wood, so I'm all about scraps. And that's what this is. And it didn't turn out too bad, although it's only 3 rings instead of 5. I wanted 5. I use Type Bond 3 on almost everything. I don't have anything other than Type Bond 3. Pass that around. This is a piece of oak, has just 2 rings on it because I started out with this board was about 1 inch thick. And I'll show you the problem you have when you get too thick a board in here, in my opinion. He says you can do from 1/2 inch to 1 inch on this jig. I would much rather use something less than 1 inch, more like 3/4 or less. I've never done anything 1/2 inch or not. But this is a piece of oak, and this outer ring, I'll talk about that when we start turning, broke off, and it's still in places in my shop I'll never find until I move out, and maybe that's when my kids will find it, when they inherit everything. So, and this turned out okay. This is polyacrylic, and then it's been shined with Hampshire sheen, and the other English thing it's the abrasive paste, Yorkshire grit. which is equivalent to 1,000 grit sandpaper, and it's much easier to use than 1,000 grit sandpaper. And then you put the Hampshire sheen on it, which is a hard wax. And I tried this last year on a bunch of bowls that I did for our church craft show, thinking that my normal favorite finish is Danish oil. But after a while, Danish oil will become dull, and you'll have to rebuff it in order to put it on your booth in the craft show. So I tried this. The Papa 1947 is the one that taught me this, and it's wonderful stuff. So that's my go-to water-based polyurethane that dries in about 5 minutes, and you can get, I don't know, 10 coats on here in 1 hour. And then I normally leave it overnight, and then I sand it back to 320 or 400, and then put the Yorkshire grit on it, and then the wax, and you're done within 30 minutes. A rag. I've done it with paper towels, and it works okay, except the paper towels leave little fuzzies here and there. You can get them off easy enough, but if you have a little rag, you don't have those fuzzies.
This was 3/4 inch wood that you started with?
Yes, it was.
I was wondering how you get a different shape with that thicker wood.
Yes, it was 1 inch. The base here is about 1 inch. It's a little less in the middle because it's dished out, but it started about 1 inch. I would not recommend oak 1 inch. I would recommend something 3/4 of an inch or less. You can start out with a board like this. This is just pine. Actually, it's not pine. They call it standard wood or something at Home Depot. And it's just cheapo 3/4 inch stuff. I glued it together and then hand planed some of it. But the piece that I'm going to use here, 5 pieces glued together, and I ran it through the planer and got it down to probably 5/8 of an inch, something like that. And so, you know, this is just regular old boards. And the idea is to take this board and turn at an angle these different pieces and then restack them so they would stack like this. And that's the start of your bowl. And this was 13 inches because that's the width of my planer. But you could hand plane it or run it through a drum sander or something like that, and you can get this 22, 44 inches of my drum sander do. And so I cut these, and I did not want to cut this with live people around in the line of sight. I think, now I have tried really, really hard to get this board through the planer, through the drum sander, to get it to be parallel and flat on both sides. This has not been, but I painstakingly try to get this flat. Then you put it on a faceplate and turn it. This thing will wobble like this. And I thought, well, 1 inch, it won't wobble. Well, it still wobbles a little bit. So it could be that the faceplate in here was not flat and not glued on. I don't know, but I did use it spent a lot of time getting that faceplate, that waist block, flat. And it wobbles a little bit. I got better at it as it goes on. But so my theory is that the farther out that ring is whatever the size of the lay that you have, the more wobble it's going to have. And when it has that wobble, you're going to go through the board here before you go through the board here. So what happens is that this starts to flop in the wind. It's still attached over here, and it finally throws itself off the lathe, and pieces go all over the place, like this. So I constantly am looking at the back, and if I'm coming through the back side, I stop turning right then and there. And then I cut it off with a knife and sand it, and I've gotten a really good. This was the last ring I cut, and it went just fine, no problems whatsoever. But at my age, I'm a little bit afraid of big old pieces like that. But it's doable. I've seen it done. This will fit on my lathe, and this has got maple, walnut, oak, purple heart, and cherry. And that'd make a nice bowl. It's a little little over a ½ inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch thick, but it's still going to wobble. I put this on my lathe with a waste block on the back, and it still wobbles. I try everything, put the tailstock up and make it there, and it seems like this right here is turning nice and true and flat, but the outside is wobbling. So you've got the problem when you're coming through at an angle with this jig that you're going to come out of the back here, but you're not going to come out on the back here. So you got to cut it off or risk having this thing fly all over the place.
And you see that it really then doesn't matter how thick, or you haven't gotten to the thickness yet where it's wobbling.
Well, this other one that I passed around was 1 inch thick, and I don't remember if it was wobbling or not. But that ring did fly apart. My theory also is that if this is thinner than 1 inch, and that he says you can go up to 1 inch, then this is going to wobble even more, just centrifugal force. So you got to be careful, okay? And the density of the woods too, because the Purple Heart is harder than all the rest of the stuff in here, even though there is a piece of maple in here on each side. So this is going to go in the raffle also. This will fit a 50 millimeter Nova jaws, and that's hot glue. And you think hot glue? No, hot glue works wonderful. And you can put some alcohol on there and it'll just melt off. So if you don't use hot glue, try it out. Stand out of the way, but make sure it's nice and hot, very hot. This is an educational demo, okay? Really? I haven't had anything come off with hot glue either, other than when I want it to come off with the glue. I mean, with the alcohol. So if you're not using it now, consider it. Just stand out of the way and turn something and see if it comes apart. Make sure it doesn't hit the dog. And this will go into the raffle. There's a center hole in the middle, so you'll have to cut it down to fit your lathe. And if you win this and this, then we want to see what you've done with this. Well, this was cut with a bandsaw, so yes, you have to true that edge up on the lathe. No. You go through a drum sander, and it's a parallel drum sander. It takes it perfectly parallel. I mean, the thickness. Talking about the thickness. This side is parallel to this side. And this ought to be a nice bowl. It's a big one, similar to what Kirk did on his cookie platter. This could be a cookie platter. Remember those days? Yeah. Here's another piece of, a smaller piece of, don't tell me, wood. Poplar. I told you not to tell me. I probably wouldn't have gotten it, but I just did and it's a considered hardwood, but it's one of the softer hardwood, and you might be able to get by doing this. And this is probably about 3/4 of an inch thick. This will go in the raffle also. So you could make a plate out of this, or you could do it on this jig if you win the jig. And I'd like to see what you do out of that. Okay, his jig comes with this little tool right here, and again, overhead, the confidence monitor is not working.
I set this up on myself.
In
I
the-
normally do that.
In the kit,
It's above you. You're good.
in the kit, he offers a parting tool that's about 3 millimeters thick. He likes the parting tool to be as thin as possible. You can't use a diamond parting tool. It has to be a flat parting tool. And I don't see why you can't use something thicker than this, but the kerf is going to be bigger, which means there's going to be a lot more sawdust to come out of that hole. And a whole lot more chance of it clogging up in there, because this will clog up. So if you're going to buy one of these kits, I highly recommend the parting tool that comes with a handle. It's a pretty nice little thing. It's very simple and it works fine. And this is M2 steel, so it's fairly hard. And that's what we're going to use tonight. Now this jig with this plastic on here, can you see me?
There's two knobs on here that cause this to slide back and forth. Okay. No, give me overhead. No, you don't.
That groove right here,
it's adjustable to the parting tool that you use. And he says to put this in here. This is not tight because I'm not going to use this tonight. I'm going to use the second method, which I think is better. And so you slide this up and get your parting tool directly in that groove. Can you see that on the upper? And it's got to be fairly tight enough, but loose enough that you can still move this in and out. Okay? So that works okay. These you tighten down. I tightened down with a pair of pliers because when I did that 1-inch thing, it actually kind of went like this. So not having the grip that I used to have, I just tighten these with a pair of pliers and it works fine. Now that was his first iteration, and one of his customers came up with something different. It's just a piece of brass. It's a knob. You can see the groove in here.
Yep. And it's made to fit his parting tool, and you run it in and out like that. I think this is a little bit safer, not safer, I think it's a little bit more, it's easier to set up than this.
Okay, and it's provided there's a hole in here. The earlier models did not have this. So in his YouTube channel, he says, if you have the old version, he'll send one of these to you, but you'll have to drill your own hole. When he sent this one, it already had the hole in it.
So if you get one from them now, you'll have parts come in with it?
Yes, it will come with it.
What's the brand?
Ron Brown's Best. Ron Brown's Best. You can find him on YouTube and his website. He's got all kinds of stuff.
In fact, Ezra, did you buy one of his Halloween jigs?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll set this up and we'll come in here and
park this away at a 45-degree angle. That's what these are. And you set that parting to, well, let me back up. You want to, the stop collar right here is adjusted for your lathe. So all you have to do is put this in your banjo and you're set to go for the next bowl that you're going to cut. What the adjustment has to be done with the 45 degrees. And it's clever. This shows how clever he is in his engineering. With the plastic thing that I just showed you, you use these red templates, and we'll pick one that says 45 degrees right here. You put this long side against the your board, and then you adjust the tool to this 45-degree angle. You can't use these with this knob. You use the blue ones, and I think it's a little more accurate because we'll set the 45 degree against the blade of the tool. Overhead. Were we on the overhead?
You were on the overhead.
Okay.
So we'll set this to 45 degrees. You see how that one leg of this triangle is on the tool, the other leg is on the piece of the paper. Now, is that critical? It's not really. If you're off a degree, I don't think it's going to matter. There are other ways of making board from a bowl. This is the easiest, and probably other than learning how to go slow on that outside ring, and maybe a little faster on the rings on the inside, it's the most convenient and most accurate, I think. Because you could cut the angles on your bandsaw, tilt the table at 45 degrees, and with a circle jig, or by hand, I've got my hand, and you come in with the grain, with your bandsaw, come in until you get to the point and then rotate. So when you get around, that ring has a split in it right here along the grain line. That'll glue back together without you won't be able to see it because you cut it along the ring. You won't be able to see it. That's the way I used to make these bowls. If you start in here, and then you're going across the grain, and then you'll probably see that glue line because the grain won't match. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is set your not jigsaw, but scroll saw at 45 degrees and drill a hole in here where you've marked out your ring like this ring right here, I mean this line, and drill it at 45 degrees or 50 or 55, whatever you're doing, and then feed that through your scroll saw and then cut your rings that way. That works fine. I don't have a scroll saw. It's up on the shelf and I'm not climbing a ladder to get it. That's up to my kids when they inherit it.
So this way, once you have this set up, and it was real finicky to start with, but then you started making 4 or 5 of these bowls, and it just goes like that. It's not bad at all. So this tailstock, this dimension right here is greater than this dimension right here. And I went about 30% more. That way the rings will have enough glue space between them to have a good glue bond. Now that one ring that came apart, I had maybe 1/4 of an inch or something like that, and that's why it blew apart. It wasn't his jig, it was what I did. Also, on that piece, I had, 13 pieces of wood glued together, and so I had the successful rings cut, and now I have to glue them together. So all these guys on YouTube line up the grain. So if this grain is vertical, then that ring is the grain vertical, and this grain is vertical. If you have 13 pieces of wood together, you got to line up all those pieces of wood. Some of them are 1/8 of an inch thick. That's nearly impossible to do. And I'm not going to show you that bowl because I think it's going to go into the fire pit, because you're painstakingly lining this up, and you look at all this stuff, you've got circles around here and everything is fine, you get it tacky, and then you think it's tacky enough, now you get this ring, and you put this on here and you move it around like this, and you get it just right, and unbeknownst to you, that ring down below moves, then you get the next ring and put it on there, and then you put the base on here, and that's all dry, and you cannot move it, and now your boards are going like this. So it's useless. So anyway, I'm not showing you that bowl. So my suggestion is, if you glue up 13 pieces of wood and all the pieces go this way, when you glue it to this one, rotate it 10 degrees, 5 degrees, or whatever your eye says, and then the next one, rotate it either that direction or that direction. And when you get through, you have all these different woods, called a crazy bowl. The grain is going all different directions, and it'll draw your eye right to it, just like when it's not lined up. It draws my eye right to it. I would never show you guys with that bowl that I did. So, or if you want them lined up for whatever reason, then leave a little bit more time for that glue to tack up before you put the next one on, and maybe put a little weight on it or whatever. And then you're off to the races. He says that this cutting edge right here should be 1/2 inch above center. I mean 1/4 inch. This bar right here is 1/2 inch, and he wants that cutting tip 1/4 inch above center. Now that's
strange. I asked him
twice. And that's another thing about Ron Brown. You buy one of his things, this isn't that expensive. You call him on the phone, and he answers the phone, and he'll sit there 30 minutes talking to you about how to do the jig. He's that nice a man. So, okay, so quarter is half inch wide. He wants that cutting tip to be a 1/4 inch above. Now, right. Less friction because this is square going into this angled piece. Now this is 45 degrees and you can see how much wood in that that hypotenuse of that triangle right there is what you're cutting. If you do a 60 degrees, you got maybe half again of that. So you got a long ways to cut through that at 60 degrees, but the bowl that comes out of it is pretty nice. You can get 45, then the next ring is 50, next one 55. And all of these jigs that he has, 45, 55, 45, 50, 55, and 60. So you can start off with 45, the next ring 50, next ring 55, and keep going. And now now instead of having a straight wall bowl at 45 degrees, which could be boring, you can get a shape out of it. And the thicker you have this ring cut from the other one, you can have more room to do something on the inside and the outside. So scrap wood. I mean, this stuff right here is not pine. It looks like it, but they call it common wood or something at Home Depot. I just bought a 1x4 piece and glued it together. And it's soft wood, and that's what I thought, well, maybe soft wood would be better, and it might not hit Nick when I'm cutting. When it blows apart, yeah, I would move. So the red ones are for this jig right here to line it up, and you line it up against this piece and your board. But the blue ones are for this jig right here. If you look at the Papa 1947, he's from Oregon somewhere, Portland, I believe. He made one of these similar to this, but it's out of aluminum. He has a machine shop, and everybody's online saying, make one for me, and he won't do it because of liability, I'm sure. So this is 45 degrees. Now, I don't have one of these lathes, so bear with me when I set this up. So if you can see this, that I'm just on the inside of that line, which is fine. I could move it back a bit. So that I'm right on the line. That's right on the line. Okay, I think that's going to be good. And I'll put this in here. I've already put it on a 1/4 inch above the center line, or half of this distance right here above the center line. And I'll put the 45. This longer edge is going to go against the board, and then the angle, look at there.
That's pretty close. Can you, upper camera, can you see that? Okay, this is not tight yet. So
one more thing. I don't want that thing to move too much. So it'd be nice if this is brass, so it's kind of soft. But I don't want it to move, so I'm going to put a flat screwdriver in there and tighten the bolt down here. Yeah, I've done that, but I take the parting tool out of the handle. This needs to go back to Sears. Oh, wait a minute. Sears isn't around anymore. But I really need a big flat whatever goes in there that spans all the way across the nut with a handle like a screwdriver, and then I can adjust it just right. Also, I've sighted down the slot without the tool in there, and that looks pretty good. And it would be disastrous if this were to come loose. as I'm turning. I'm gonna call it good. I'd hate to mess this up because this bowl is going into the raffle also. And you're going to have to glue it back together and turn it on the lathe and then come and show us what you did. Okay. Now, the other thing, this is the last ring I'm going to cut, so I don't really need this. If I were to put this here on the lathe, and it's 90 degrees to your bedways, then you can clamp this down, this board down, and then you slide it in and out. Your angle won't change here. So this is kind of important to push that in and out. And just regular C-clamps, they work just fine. Now, where's my face shield? Because I don't want to get hurt. Okay, I'm right on the line. I think that's going to be just fine. Okay, nice knowing you. Now he says up to 1,000 RPM, but I had most luck with these outside rings around 500. This is on the inside, and you can see a little bit of a wobble, but it's not going to, I don't think it's going to bother me. So I'm around 700 right now, but now, Tim Yoder did this, used one of these, and he blew on his YouTube channel. And the first ring he cut, it blew apart, and he did it in slow motion. It's funny, but he did it again because he wanted to show it. But he only showed one ring being cut. Here we go. And he was emphasizing when you get towards the bottom side here, the sound will change. And when it changes, then stop and figure out what you're doing. I did that and put the tool back in there and turned it on and got a catch. I didn't blow it up, but the secret, I think, is to maybe trail this down a little bit and go nice and slow and smooth in there. Don't try to jam it because you're going to have disaster. Hear the noise? See, I got a catch there. I'm used to a big red knob to turn my lathe off. Okay, So now let's take this off. Since this is the last ring on here, this is going to be the base of the bowl. I can go ahead and take it out of the chuck. Otherwise, I would take the chuck out and then remove the ring, put it aside, and then put it back on. You'll have a truer face. But this is the last ring I'm cutting, so I'm just going to take it out of the chuck. And this was done with a mortise, and it worked okay. I've done it with a tenon, and I don't know if it was the wood I used. I think it was, what did you say this was?
Poplar?
Poplar. I think it was poplar, and it moved in the chuck. And you tighten it down even more and more and more, and you get little indentations from the chuck in there. And it was the right size, but it still spun in there for whatever reason. I think it was the wood. It was, I hope it's not my chuck. And then you glue it together, put it on the lathe, and since you already have this, you put it back in the same chuck, and you turn your bowl. This. And this is just plain old big box standard wood, or I think they call it. And it'll probably stain up real nice, or maybe even dye real nice, and just use some dye and dye it. I've used shoe polish, and not the wax kind, but the liquid kind, and it dyes it just black, black, black. And that's the finish that you put on it. Or I put some black on there and had to go back and hit it again with sandpaper, and that looks pretty good too. And you could use, let's see, leather dye or shoe polish, or the alcohol dyes will work real good, and mix and match. There's hundreds of YouTubes on how you can put different dyes on the inside of a bowl that are gradient, where the outside is red and it turns into yellow and a blue and a green on the inside. It really makes your bowl with common wood stick out like a sore thumb. It's very artful. And if it didn't want to come off real easy, I just have one of these knives and I go around and cut it out of there. And that works too. Then you would sand these, although these are sanded pretty good with a drum sander. You sand them again so that your glue joint would be good. Now the challenge in this whole thing comes is centering up that ring on the next ring. And Tim Yoder drew a separate line. You know, he draws a line across the board like this, and then he comes down about a half inch, 3/4 of an inch from the center and draws one out in one quadrant of that board. And he says that's to help you line up the rings when you put them back together again. And every one of the boards that I've made, either with the old-fashioned way, did I tell you the one that I did at the Woodcraft? Where I had a dovetail into between two boards, and you cut it on the bandsaw, and when you put it together, each ring has a dovetail, a dovetail joint, the pins and the tails right in the center. But you don't have to have the dovetail joint in the center of the board. Why can't you have the dovetail over here? And so now your rings are a little bit different with the dovetail just spattered all over different ways. Now, I'm getting a little better at this, so I would try something that's a little smaller. This is 5/8 of an inch or so. Say, try 1.5 inch. And then by the time you turn it down, it's, you got a 1/4 inch bowl, or real thin. The bigger the bowl is, the more vibration you're going to get on the end, so you got to deal with that. But that's a challenge. We're all here for challenges, right? This was not Ron Brown's fault. This was mine because I didn't cut in far enough. You showed you the line that I drew around. I didn't cut in. I just eyeballed it and stuck it in there. And you shouldn't do that. You should go at least a little bit more than the thickness of your bowl, and you can draw the graphics out, and the geometry is there so that you can have more of a glue surface. Oh, don't look at this right here. That's the bowl I didn't want to show you. Oh, man. So the two different jigs, this one with the knob on it, I recommend that. Although I would manufacture some kind of a flat screwdriver or something that would go in there and hang it, and then you tighten it underneath. And maybe this could even be a star knob down here that you don't have to have a socket. And it might be easier for you to get that just perfectly lined up. And I have taken this parting tool out and just laid it in there. It's a little easier. It's not as heavy when you're measuring those angles. And when you start out, I would recommend you start out accurate as you can. You give it some thought, and possibly the bowl that you're going to turn here, if it's not that accurate from ring to the ring, it's liable to affect what your bowl looks like. Now this one is common. It's just going to be straight sides, unless you kind of blend in these steps in here, whatever way you want. It could look like a stepped bowl. You can do anything you want. Any questions? So this whole demo is sponsored by Ron Brown and Ron Brown's Best. And I recommend highly that you go to his website, because there is something on there you've got to have. Guaranteed. And hopefully at Christmas time, he'll send something to us, and we'll have a demo in February, because Johnny Tolley's coming in January, on how to use whatever he gives us, whoever wins that. I'm going to buy tickets for that one. And he is such a nice man, and the fact that you can just call him on the phone and he answers the phone, and you tell him, and he said, how many people do you have in your club? And I told him, and he says, well, make sure that you let me know in December. I want to give you something to give away at your Christmas party. I said, well, Ron, the agreement that we had when you sent this to me is that it's raffled off in this meeting that I do the demo. He says, I can't begin to tell you how many people I've talked to on the phone. So he didn't even remember that agreement. But we'll get something out of him. He's that nice guy. Any questions? So my recommendation is start off with something that's less than an inch. Turn it maybe 500 or 600 RPM or slower. That last ring, just be patient, get through it. And you could speed it up, I think, when you get further into the center of your board. And it doesn't have to be one species of wood. I passed that one around. It could be something like this. So we'll have to cut a hole in the bed to turn this one. But whoever wins this has to agree to bring it back and show us what you've done. If you haven't, I'm going to say this board goes with the jig. Yeah. I don't think I've forgotten anything, but your questions could remind me that I did. Any questions?
How much slop is in
I did see some slop in there, and I don't know if that slop was already there, or did I make the slop?
Well, I mean, could you keep binding as much, wiggle it a little bit, to move the curve up a little bit, so that you can bind?
He says don't do that. But there are other YouTube guys using this very jig, and they say we got to wiggle it to make it a little bit wider, like that.
No, it's like when you use a McNaughton bowl saver, you need to wiggle a little bit to open that curve up so it goes
Oh. Well, I think on that hard oak, it was following the grain, and as it went in like this, it actually curved like that, because the back side of the ring that you cut off,
It's not straight, it was scalloped.
well, it was a grain tear out, terribly. And really, there's enough wood there that you could turn that away, but still, you know, and one ring I ripped off, thinking that was, like I cut through three quarters of it or a little bit more and then ripped that ring off, and it just tore the grain out like crazy. But it's going to be filled with glue and you can turn it away. I think it's going to be okay. But yes, sir.
You considered a backer board for those outer rings with like two-sided tape to get like plywood or MDF to keep,
The vibration down, that's,
you know, you have to
yeah,
worry about
yeah,
cracking
yeah.
that ring, getting it off.
yeah, that's a good idea. Double-sided tape, and you'll be able to tell when you've been through, go through the ring and then stop and take the backer board off. Well, you got to take it off the lathe also.
With the backer board, you could cut them off. Yeah. You could cut them all and then take the whole thing apart. Yeah. You could use the backer board too.
Depends on what the backer board is. I think that if it's a piece of hardwood, probably you're okay. But then you're back to the problems with hardwood when you cut these. It'll follow the grain and it might split apart. But if you got through this board and not through your backer board, then you could take the ring off, and that might work. Then you can get a big board. I don't see how, as much equipment as I have to get these boards flat and parallel to these sides, I can't keep it from wobbling. I don't know if it's not my Powermatic, I don't believe. I've used 2 or 3 different chucks thinking that's what it was. 15 inches.
No, I meant how big of a chuck?
A Nova, whatever this model is.
What's your jaw size on that?
This is 50 millimeters right here. I use some step jaws that. Well, I did use one that's about expanded. It's close to 4, but I don't think it's exactly 4.
Larger chuck, probably going to save you some stress.
Yeah, then if you ever use a larger chuck, then your base is going to be pretty big. I guess you just turn it down. You got more room to go, put an OG curve in there or something. So this does not go with the raffle. I mean, it goes in the raffle, but it doesn't go with the jig. And so I want to see what you do with this.
Do you recall what the jig cost?
I want to say $130. Somebody look that up for me. $139. $139, and that's with the parting tool. And this parting tool stays sharp pretty long time. It is M2, but you just stick it on your diamond wheel and hit it. And yes, sir.
Yeah, you're spending a lot of time to keep the angle at 45 degrees, but does that really matter?
If you were to measure this, I bet it's not exactly 45, but yes, it does matter. When you stack the rings together, you can start off with 45 in the outer rings and then go to 50, then 55, and then 60, and whatever they go up to, 65.
Depending on the shape of the bowl. If you keep it at 45,
Yep.
you have a nice straight side, and if you go to thicker angles, you get a nice rounded bowl.
You have to combine the angles to get that shape in there. If you stay at all 50, it's still going to be a straight side. So go 45 on the first ring, then go 50, then 55, or 60 or whatever you want to do, and see what it turns out. I want to see that bowl. So, no more questions. I'm finished.